Okay, so hello everybody. Thank you for coming to the Fed's debate for the provincial elections for the riding of Kitchener-Waterloo. I'd like to thank all the candidates for coming to the debate and showing up, and apologize for our technical difficulties near the beginning. Hopefully everything else goes smoothly. So I'm going to pass you over now to Aaliyah, who's going to present the format of the debate and be the moderator. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaliyah. I'm the editor-in-chief of Imprint, and I will be moderating the debate today. I'll just quickly go over the format. We're going to start with opening statements. We're going to have 2 general questions. We're going to have platform-specific questions for each candidate, and then we're going to return to general questions, audience questions, and then closing statements. So if we're all ready to begin, yes? We're going to start with opening statements. We have time cards here. I think they've been explained to you. Each opening statement will be 2 minutes long. We previously selected names at random, so the order for opening statements is going to be Stacey Dankert, Jamie Burton, Tracy Weiler, and then Catherine Fife. So if Stacey, you want to get started?
Sure. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Stacey Dankert, and I'm here today representing the Green Party of Ontario for the Kitchener-Water riding. The reason that I am here before you today really is about my kids. My kids, for me, are the most important thing in my life, and I've been watching politics for a number of years and getting very frustrated with what I'm seeing. It doesn't feel like it's working anymore in the system that we've got. At this point, I think that it's time that we start talking about new ideas so that we can finally start to move forward and put in place the best policies that help to help everybody in our society. This particular place is actually one that's near and dear to my heart because it wasn't that long ago that I completed my PhD here on campus in the psychology department. And currently I'm actually working here as a postdoctoral fellow. So I understand a lot of the issues that are happening here on campus, both from a student perspective as well as from an academic perspective. And so it's something that I think is important to many of us here. And I think that it's time to have a good conversation about how we can help you guys not only in your current education, but also once you've finished that in dealing with getting a good job and moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Stacey. We'll move on now to Jamie.
Thanks. I'll tell you, it's a challenge to look out here and not reflect how long it's been since I spent a lot of time in this room, but thanks very much for coming. Opening up to paint pictures of me, 4 children, husband true, 2 businesses, tech and leisure. Who knew that balancing on the principles learned in youth, then Waterloo. Volunteer. Child life, impressions of those striving to live, stories, magics, illusion, all done to give inspiration. An outdoor learning space, sundial, trees, a strong start for children whose minds hum like bees. Inspiration. An opportunity. Some may say, what was, is, but I'm not the man. I look to the future, what others can. Warriors can, new voters. But what? PCs, 100,000 jobs cut, now a rant. NDP, no measure of those most important, makes no sense. Possibility, Kathleen Wynne, she's important to me, what leadership is. Technology, investment, transportation, education, services, inclusion for disability. Now that's our opportunity for you and for me. Jamie Burton, June 12th, you choose. Win, win. I'm stuck.
Be careful of that.
Thank you, Jamie. Tracy?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity for me to be here today with you and have a conversation about education and all the elements that affect us here in Ontario. Some of you may know that I'm an academic instructor in the MBA program at Laurier, so I'm fortunate enough to hear from students every day what is important to them, and I look forward to our conversation here today. I was fortunate with my family to immigrate here to Canada, to Ontario at the age of 12, because my family thought that Ontario was the best place to live in the world and would create a land of opportunity for us all. Today, if we look forward 20 plus years, I have 2 young children, and I'm thinking about the future of our province for them. I was fortunate enough to get into education, both on the Ontario Early Years, as the past president of the Early Learning Program here in Waterloo Region, and as an instructor, as I mentioned, in the MBA program at Laurier. So I seem to be in the education sector for many parts of my life, and that creates an opportunity for conversation and for ongoing learning for me. One of the reasons that I chose to be your PC candidate here in Kitchener-Waterloo is because for me, the PC party looked at Ontario and where it is today, and in our plan, we looked for a vision of where we want to be in the future. And by looking at that, we said, okay, this is the plan of how we think we can get there. A detailed plan with conversation across Ontario to make Ontario a better place. So on June 12th, I look forward to be honored to become your next MPP. Thank you for having me here today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Catherine Fife, and I have been your member of Provincial Parliament for the last 18 months. Many of you may know that I entered politics primarily because of public education. I was elected as a trustee in 2003 with the Waterloo Region District School Board because I believe that public education is the great equalizer in society. I came originally from Toronto, where I was a settlement worker working with new immigrants, and I was inspired by the new refugees and immigrants who were willing to fight so hard for public education because they knew that it opened doors in their lives, and they knew that that was the future of their children. For 10 years, I served on the school board. I was a champion in the local community on source water protection. I fought for childcare and early learning. I fought the school board and the systems within the school board for greater equality and inclusivity. Those are the principles which have guided me my entire life. Winning the by-election was an amazing moment, I think, for not only Kitchener-Waterloo, but for the entire province. If you will remember, the Liberal government thought that they could buy this riding. The Conservatives offered up some regressive policies because they thought they owned the riding, but the people of this province, including the students on this campus, said they were not in favor of that cynical kind of politics in the province of Ontario. This debate today will be a reality check for the Liberal candidate. I have the opportunity as a new MPP to share with you a few insights into what I've learned at Queen's Park in the last 18 months. And I hope to inspire you to vote for the New Democrat Party of Ontario because we have a strong, balanced, pragmatic plan. We are not promising everything to you. What we are going to do is put a pragmatic plan right in front of you so that you can make an informed decision. I thank you for being here today.
Thank you, candidate. This on? Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. All right, so, sorry. We're going to move on to the general question portion. Each general question will get a 1-minute response from each candidate. Then there will be a 4-minute general debate. And then each candidate will get 30 seconds to close.
So the first question would be regarding student financial aid and tuition. So the question is, Ontario's tuition costs are the highest in the country. Despite the sizable financial aid system in place, 11% of students still find themselves without sufficient financial assistance to meet their needs. Studies have shown that investment in upfront needs-based financial aid is the best way to ensure access to post-secondary education for all Ontarians. How would you ensure access to post-secondary education?
All right, and the order for this question will be Jamie, Tracy, Catherine, Stacy.
Thank you very much for the question. There's no doubt that the Liberal government is committed to continuing the investment in education. Sorry, a little bit louder. Sorry about that. Maybe it's not on. Is that better? Can everybody hear me? I don't know. It's on. I'll move closer. Is that better? Okay. There's no doubt that the Liberal government is committed to continue investment in education. The clear indication is that for the last 10 years, they have increased their funding 80%. The evidence of that is in the results of you, the students, and in our society in general. They are committed to continue the 30% off for students. There are a number of different grants that are more accessible now than they've ever been before, including those for part-time studies. We have ensured and worked very hard to make sure that these tuition incentives and amounts of money are possible for everyone. And we have continued to address the accessibility considerations by expanding those things allowed for people who are also part-time and on ODSP, and will continue to do so.
Tuition rates are a huge concern for many students, the affordability of which has gone up 35% over the last number of years, and we have become, as noted, the most expensive province in Canada by which to go to school in. I'm concerned about Liberal promises because in 2003, they said they were going to hold the rates on tuition and freeze tuition, and yet 2 years later, under the Liberal government, they did increase 35%. We have committed in our plan that we will hold the line on tuition, and in addition to that, given some of the challenges around accessing financial aid, we will make sure that no Ontario student is denied access because of a lack of money. We want our universities to access, people to access education, produce excellence, and create job-ready students. Thank you.
So the NDP plan is to freeze tuition. We are the only party who are truly committed to that. It's been consistent. It's our policy paper. It is that policy comes from our membership, and we are absolutely committed to doing so. We want to freeze any interest, take interest off loans immediately. Students in Ontario graduate with on average, $37,000 worth of debt. That is a crippling amount of debt. It is the highest amount of debt in Canada that students pay the price for. The options that the Liberals have given students, and you have the lived experience of this, that the 30% off what I call an advertising scheme tuition rate has proven to be completely unsuccessful. Only 30% of students can qualify for 30% of this tuition grant, with the students who need the most not receiving it. And I look forward to talking about that a little bit more as we move through the debate. Thank you.
So the Ontario Green Party also agrees that we should be freezing tuition rates. And additionally, I think one of the issues in the past that we need to address is not allowing these massive swings in rates. So we want to tie any further increases to inflation so that they can't be unpredictable. In addition, I think that it is a good idea to because I'm hearing over and over from both this student population as well as that at Laurier, to move the tax credit money that's currently available to that upfront money availability. So that is important, as well as extending things like OSAP to people who currently aren't able to access it, like those part-time students, people on ODSP and other social programs. We want to be doing everything that we can to enable students to further their education and be the best prepared that they can for life.
So we will begin the 4 minutes of general debate on this question.
Well, I think I'd like to talk about the 30% off tuition grant and why it's been so unsuccessful. It only qualifies students who, it doesn't apply to part-time students. It doesn't apply to mature students in the province of Ontario. You cannot access the 30% tuition grant if you've actually taken time off of, if you've had to go to work after high school, you don't qualify for it. In essence, what the Liberal government actually did was just make accessing tuition grants more difficult. The Canadian Federation of Students Ontario conducted a Harris Decima states that 69% of Ontarians believe that the Liberal government broke the spirit of their election promise to give students and their families 30% off the cost of tuition fees. The one thing that they did spend money on, which was your money, was $5 million on advertising that program. We need to freeze tuition rates. We need to have a holistic look at the way post-secondary education is funded in the province of Ontario. And this is a matter of not only your futures, but we need students to be graduating from post-secondary institutions who are not saddled with crippling debt, who have a skill set that the economy and our environment can benefit from. And quite honestly, just do not be fooled again, please.
I think we realize that going to school and furthering your education is more than just the tuition. I believe that it's not the only cost, and I believe that there are fees such as housing, groceries, and textbooks that are also to be considered, and I know that you all know that. The Liberals introduced the Residential Tenancies Act, which limits the increase to the cost of rent. The Liberals introduced the Ontario Tuition Grant, which will save students and their families thousands of dollars over their education. The Liberal introduced the new tuition framework, which over 4 years will save students $1,200. To date, they have given in grants on the 30% off a total of almost 30,000 grants, totaling $32 million in grants. I believe that indicates a clear commitment to the education.
So one of the things that I think should also be brought up is graduate student tuition fees. As a former graduate student here myself, I know that when you're no longer taking any coursework, the tuition fees can start to be quite crippling for you in your last couple of years when you're supposed to be the most productive. And so the Green Party believes that you should actually be able to drop those tuition fees at that time for those students. And one of the other things I just wanted to highlight that was a personal concern to me is if we're talking about making education accessible to students, I'm slightly worried about the PC plan, which seems to tie any funding availability to student performance. And I think that's a nightmare to try to actually implement, but in addition, I think it's too expensive.
So just to address the comment about OSAP being tied to marks, that is completely incorrect and is not part of our formal platform at all. In fact, that appeared in our discussion paper, which was released over a year ago, which is really a tool for conversation to see what elements of Ontario's education sector were most important and the elements that would be most valuable as we prepared to provide a provincial platform for this election. And so what we have committed to clarify, is increasing accessibility to OSAP and to post-secondary education so that no student that wants to learn is unable to afford or attend education.
Thank you, and we'll now do the 30-second closing statements in the same order. which, sorry, was started with Jamie, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. I do believe that we have committed to more accessible learning. We've developed the Ontario Online, which will see credits available online by 2015. We have evaluated the 30% off to ensure that it expands to meet the needs of those students who are part-time or those students who have 5 years since high school. We've identified that those were considerations and we've improved upon them. And obviously that indicates a true commitment to making sure that this is a value that all students can access. I do believe that it is more about being able to meet the needs of those most unable to afford it, and that's what we're committed to as well. Is it me?
Just to clarify, you heard from the Liberals that the new tuition fee framework will make tuition more affordable for you. In fact, the tuition fees will increase between 3 and 5% annually for the next 4 years. It's now in the regulation. They now have a free license to increase your tuition by 3 to 5% every single year. The Conservatives have said that their long-standing position on tuition is to deregulate tuition policies. Deregulation that doesn't mean that tuition fees are going to go down. That means that tuition fees are going to go up. So the policies are very different. The parties are very different, and that's why this debate is so important.
All right, sorry. Tracy was actually meant to go next, so we'll go back to Tracy there.
Thank you. You know, I think we've heard loud and clear here that the 30% tuition grant has been very unsuccessful and provided to students, and the most needed students who needed that grant are ineligible through the constraints of the program. We want to, in our plan, make sure that no Ontario student is denied access because of a lack of money. And again, we want our universities to offer access, produce excellence, and create job-ready students.
The Green Party will never try to buy your vote or promise things that we don't think are achievable. So we think that the most important thing is to try to make tuition accessible to every human being equally. We think that we should make tuition rates a responsible amount of money and make sure that we tie them to inflation so you can expect what the increases will be in the future. And we believe that we also need to do all of that while taking in mind the economy and making sure we don't leave you with a massive debt.
All right, thank you, candidates. We'll move on to another general question, and the order will be Tracy, Catherine, Stacy, and Jamie.
Okay. This question is about education quality. In today's global economy, our institutions and graduates are competing against not just the rest of Canada, but the world. The 2013 QS University ranking had 1 Ontario institution placed in the top 100, while Quebec had 2, Switzerland had 4, and Hong Kong had 3. These 3 jurisdictions all have significantly smaller populations than Ontario. What investments will your party make to ensure the quality of Ontario's universities on a global scale?
While government would claim that the provinces, our province of Ontario, our post-secondary education is world-class, we have seen that our international rankings are slipping, and we live in an international world in terms of competition for resources and talent. One of the things that we need to do is figure out and support why we are seeing this decrease in international quality. There have been many concerns expressed by students, faculty, and employers, and our party has had the conversation about quality and ensuring that students get prepared for the job market, 'for the 21st century.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very good question, and it's very timely, actually. Quality should be the driving priority for post-secondary education. And what I'm hearing from students and from parents who are actually sometimes paying for the education is that they're looking for smaller class sizes. They're looking for having their instructors to be not part-time or temporary, but have a stronger connection to the university, so that they're grounded in the culture of the university. And there has to be a greater connection between public education and post-secondary education. We actually saw that play itself out with the math curriculum here at the University of Waterloo a few years ago. The transition from that OAC math into a math program, for instance, at the university, there was a gap, and so there was a disconnect. And that requires true leadership on the curriculum focus. But last of all, universities and colleges have been balancing their budgets on your backs because they have not been receiving the appropriate funding from the province for capital infrastructure and maintenance. That's a priority for the NDP.
I think one of the ways to start to address this problem is actually to look even earlier in the system. So I think that currently the education system overall is generally underfunded. And so part of our solution for this issue is to finally talk about merging the Catholic and the public school board. And by doing that, we can save $1.6 billion every year, and that money can actually go back into our education system. That then can help to provide our kids with a stronger education with more EA support, etc. And that will feed through the line. And then when people get to university, then they'll be that much better prepared to move forward and to prepare themselves. Additionally, we would like to increase our support of co-op funding, mentoring programs, as well as apprenticeship, which should also help.
I think that this university is a perfect example of quality education. I have been very fortunate to spend a lot of time on campus looking at a number of different programs, and I have spent some time looking into all of the different opportunities that are part of your experiential learning. And there is no doubt that is how you get an international caliber student. In particular, I think of the government invested in innovative and velocity. I think of, in particular, the new greenhouse social enterprise solution that they're developing where students can come and collaborate with their ideas and establish a plan to meet a social need. This tells me that there is no doubt that this provides a quality education, and this government is who has provided the funding for those opportunities to develop. And there is every component of those opportunities maintained within this budget, and we are committed to ensuring that that continues.
The 4-minute session begins.
I think when we look at the issue of quality, one plan, if you will, that comes up time and time at the door that we think can solve the issue is reevaluating the tenure and promotion system that's currently in the universities, and considering that teaching quality and output are as important as research. In his recommendations to the province of Ontario, Don Drummond underlined the importance of this shift. And student groups such as the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, that many of you will know, also considered that teaching-focused faculty would be a priority. So we need to see if we can move and change our system to meet the 21st century needs of our students in helping them be best prepared as they can be to get out into the world.
Okay, so quality is determined by the teachers, by the level of instruction. And you have seen more and more part-time instructors as a reality on university campuses, non-tenured positions, a decline in research, a decline in experiential learning opportunities for students, which actually drives the curriculum absorption. The Canadian Federation of Students, the Canadian Association of University Teachers, the Colleges Ontario, Councils of Ontario Universities have all said that Ontario receives the least amount of money per student per capita. It is an undeniable fact. A Liberal will tell you that they are doing whatever whatever a Liberal says, quite honestly, you shouldn't believe them. Because Stats Canada says the highest tuition rates, Stats Canada is actually a verifiable source. The highest tuition rates in Canada, the least funding per student per capita. This also drives quality. You are living it each and every day, as are your instructors, as are your teachers. So please remember to fact check before you vote. Let's get this interesting, okay?
Well, I obviously don't agree, and I can assure you that I don't lie, and I am very much a Liberal. The students that I've talked to understand that investing in themselves through higher education is worthwhile. It is not only personal development, but it is an absolute development into our economy and to all things that are driving our economy. It was very nice of Ms. Fife to mention that we want to see a consistency in our education. Well, the Liberals, in fact, have designed an entire platform for education that speaks to the very first moments of your schooling right to the very last days of your post-education and postgraduate studies. They have, in fact, a perfect example of consistent education throughout your entire life, and it's a very good one. Thank you.
We are now going to jump to platform-specific questions. So there'll be one for each of you. And, oh, sorry, yeah, you get closing statements. I apologize. That's 30 seconds each in the same order. So starting with Tracy.
We understand that quality is the most critical piece of any teaching experience, and we need to ensure that more of your money is going to the teaching environment. So when we talk about quality, obviously there are several solutions. And our party, when we look at ensuring that there are teaching-based faculty roles, that's a way for us to ensure that quality of education is deemed as important as research. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The quality discussion is crucial, but you have to remember that when you follow the funding, you follow the real priorities of a government. So in this province, we received the least amount of student funding for post-secondary education in the country. So that is indisputable. Stats Canada and all the sources that I've already put forward. Cooperative education is one of the major thrusts of our platform. It needs to be a reality for most students across the country. And our job youth employment strategy will aid universities in making sure that that's a reality. Thank you.
I would agree that we do, when we're talking about tuition rate freezes, that it's really important to also talk about maintaining the level of funding that universities currently have or increasing it. Having been in an academic setting, I would tend to agree with Tracy that we do need dedicated teaching roles, but we also need to be producing good quality research that isn't tied to private funding sources. Thanks.
So the Conservatives are going to fire our educators, and the NDP are committing and saying that they're committed to education, but that is untrue because in the 2013 budget, when they made 5 demands of the Liberals to support the budget, they did not choose tuition or housing as one of those priorities. In fact, they did not support students. Do you trust that they would if they didn't when they were?
All right, thank you. Now we will be jumping to platform-specific questions. The format for those will be, the question will be asked, 1 minute will go to the chosen candidate, and then there will be 3 minutes of general debate. And the order for the first platform-specific question, it will go to Catherine.
Good.
And then, so you'll speak, and then all of you can speak.
Okay, so the first question for the NDP candidate. Your platform indicates that you want to freeze tuition. This would decrease the money that is going to universities. How would you make up this disparity without negatively affecting the quality of university services?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I hope everybody heard that. Basically, the question is, how are we going to fund tuition freeze? Right now, at Queen's Park, there is a huge amount of waste, especially in the healthcare sector and at the top end of the education sector. We have seen budget lines at post-secondary from the management and up continue to balloon. We want to streamline management and CEO and executive salaries, which you are funding, and redirect the funding back down to the front lines, which speaks to the quality issue of instructor and teachers, but also will lend itself to a tuition freeze. As I mentioned before, universities have received insufficient capital funding and maintenance funding for many years under the Liberal government. This needs to be rectified. They have essentially been trying to maintain university infrastructure through tuition increases. That has to stop. It's a principled position to take, and it's completely actionable. Thank you very much.
You may begin the 3 minutes.
Did you want to respond or not? Okay.
All right, then I will. I think there's every opportunity to take the chance to speak and stand up for what you believe, and I firmly believe that this government has clearly indicated its commitment to education. There is no doubt that doing business and being a business leader and developing a strategy and a solution in an innovative way and having an execution to ensure that that plan is not only successful but sustainable has allowed me a new way of thinking. And there is no doubt that when you freeze something, something else has to give. There is no doubt that if you do not continue that investment, something has to give. So the question is then, if you are going to freeze tuition, what are we willing to give up? The Liberal government is not willing to make you give up everything, anything. They are saying that they are committed to continuing investing in your education and your future because you know what? You are the pivotal point of success in this province. It are the decisions that you make today, the things that you learn today that speak to our future, that speak to innovation, that speak to solving the problems in our society, that speak to our social and economic factors, and that speak to our environmental challenges. And that is why there's a continued commitment from this government to ensure that you have every tool that you need in order to ensure the success of all of our future.
I think it's absolutely critical that we need to hold the line on tuition because with the fact that Ontario has the highest tuition rates in Canada and Ontario gets the least amount of funding per student, if we really truly believe and talk about access for all, then we need to hold the line on tuition. There is certainly a lot of inefficiencies that can be cited in the current government. We have lots and lots of room to create inefficiencies with the programs that are out there today. And we need to make sure that we can hold the line on tuition so that we can ensure affordability and access to university for all.
I think it's very rare that you'll actually see general consensus up here, and so it's nice to hear that generally people are talking about freezing tuition for the students here. I have already mentioned one of our ideas for saving money, merging the Catholic and the public school board, that would save $1.6 billion that can be reinvested in education, and I think that that would actually enhance the experience for everybody rather than actually make anybody lose. Additionally, there are a number of other sources like better resource management, which could actually bring in quite a significant amount of funds. I'm out of time.
So do I get to conclude?
Catherine, sorry, we have a follow-up question. The panel has a follow-up question. We just want to clarify what exactly, how exactly are you making up that disparity if you...
No. Our question is basically, are you actually fully funding the tuition freeze? Will the money that the universities would have gotten from that tuition increase go to the university still?
That's exactly clear. Yes, so the answer is yes. And I just want to point out some of the funding, where we would get the funding for it. Right now, the Liberals... Oh,
I think that was just, we wanted a yes or no answer
oh
to the
yes.
question.
So the answer would be yes. Now
Okay.
it says here, do I get a conclude?
I don't believe in what we sent you there was any conclusion for the platform-specific questions.
Oh yeah, okay. All right,
All right.
moving on.
Okay, so the next question will be for Stacy.
So yeah, this is for Stacy. So your party's platform is very light on information about post-secondary education. Does this mean that post-secondary issues would not be a focus should you be elected?
I'm very appreciative that you've taken the time to look at our platform. This year, because we're fully aware that we're very unlikely to be the governing party of Ontario, we decided to focus on points in our platform that were instantly achievable. But in our longer policy book, then it talks about our general fundamental ideology and all of the things that we would be fighting for within the governments that would be, or the budgets that would be presented for us. And one of those things is clearly stated as trying to get that tuition as close to the federal average as possible, because we've been aware for quite a while that this has been an issue. And so the freeze we think is absolutely essential, and that would be something that we would be fighting for.
All right, and we can begin the 3 minutes of general debate if there is any.
We're having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah,
I don't know if people can hear you, but I can hardly hear you when you talk. So can you maybe?
All right, is that better?
That
if
is
I
better.
hold it closer to my mouth?
Yeah.
All right. And was there any general debate you wanted on that question, or I can move on?
So can I just clarify what the question was, that specifically to the Green Platform, there wasn't a tuition freeze outlined in there?
There was very little information about post-secondary education in
Post-secondary.
general.
Okay, sorry. So now that we can hear you, this should go a little bit more smoother. That's good.
Sorry. All right, so we will move on then to the Liberal question for Jamie.
Your platform introduced Experience Ontario, which encourages graduating high school students to spend 9 months doing community work. However, the eligibility for the 30% off tuition grant is tied to the high school graduation rate. Will your party make the 30% off eligibility 4 years regardless of high school graduation date?
That's a very good question. Thank you. I think that there has been clear indication that the Liberal government is absolutely dedicated to ensure the success of the 30% off tuition. We have made changes, so therefore that does obviously reflect the fact that we've given this consideration when we give feedback. I have asked students directly what they think about the 30% off, and I've yet to hear one person say that it's not an effective approach to education, and it has never been expressed to me personally that this is a challenging equation. The other piece of Experience Ontario that we need to focus on is that it provides a very unique opportunity to some students who want to further develop their skills before they commit to that education and what they want to learn, or before they go on to apprenticeship or to colleges. And I think that this is a very strong plan to have development within the community, to incorporate partnerships with businesses, to incorporate partnerships with community members. And personally speaking to it, my daughter took the year off between high school and university, and quite honestly, it was a personal choice.
Thank you, Jamie. We'll begin the 3 minutes of general discussion.
I think that it's very important when we're talking about increasing accessibility within our school system across tuition issues, those sorts of things, that we are very careful to not restrict access to those things. And so while I think it is important to provide students an opportunity for cooperative experiences, apprenticeships, or mentorship opportunities, I think that we have to be careful about tying it directly to support. I think these should be opportunities and not mandated.
So as I've already stated, the 30% tuition grant only works for 30% of the students. This is not a progressive idea. It is not a strategy that improves accessibility to post-secondary education. And I think it's important for us just to revisit of how this came to be. In the 2011 election, Liberals started promising a 30% off tuition grant to students halfway through the election. Everyone was unsure as to what it meant, including most of the candidates at the time. Their answers to questions were dismissive, and how it would be implemented remained unclear. Once elected, they implemented major cuts to existing grants in order to fund this new 30% off grant. The worst thing about the new grant is, of course, is that it excludes some of the students that need a tuition grant the most. So this is not, and this isn't a. It's incredible for me to hear that the Liberal candidate has not heard this, because the Canadian Federation of Students from campuses across the province have come and voiced their concerns about accessibility to post-secondary education. So it is not a priority for the Liberal government to improve access, but they want you to think that they're improving access.
I believe you've called me a liar again. I don't lie, and I'm telling you that when I ask students that is what they told me. So I have met with a number of groups, and I've met with students individually, and I've asked them that very question. Do I think that there are still those who could benefit from an investment in themselves and for their education? Absolutely. Do I believe that this government is intent on making these models better? Absolutely. They've demonstrated that commitment. But as far as accessibility, there is no one in this room who can speak to that better. It is my personal life commitment to ensure opportunity for everyone, and that is my personal platform.
Just
the
a
fact
point.
that this government has developed Online Ontario, the fact that this government has developed strategies that speak to enabling all, tells me that there is a focus in all sectors, not just education, that try to incorporate the citizens of this province and try to ensure success for everyone. And that I am committed to.
Just a point of clarification, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm saying that the Liberal government cannot implement policy with integrity or dignity. They're more concerned with implementing strategies that look like they're doing what the press release says. On the ground, this grant does not work. It does not work, and a tuition freeze is good.
Can I not respond?
Sorry, the 3 minutes is up, so we will be moving on. The next question is for the Conservative candidate.
Your platform indicates that you're interested in increasing focus on STEM fields and business, as well as implementing an increased focus on colleges. What does that mean for students in other university programs?
Thank you for the question. What we understand from a lot of our research is that these are the studies that do help and completely drive economic growth. So in our platform, when we talk about students in these subjects, what we want to do is work with universities to provide more student spaces for students in these vital areas of study. Specifically, given our local hub of innovation and entrepreneurship here in Waterloo region, this would enable more students to graduate with those programs and skills that drive economic growth.
A hub which the Liberal government has provided a considerable amount of funding for to ensure that that innovation happens and gives students the opportunity to develop their ideas and gives our startups the opportunity to have a cohesive and collaboration and a plan that speaks to not only the identification of something that meets a need, but an executable plan in a sustainable model. And that is our continued commitment to this. There is no doubt that this community has benefited from the comprehensive plan of the Liberal government and the plan that looks at what is needed, how do we have a successful solution, how do we implement it, how is it a sustainable model, and that has been fully appreciated by the members of this community.
I take personal kind of insult to students being called elements of an economic growth. I actually believe that the purpose of an education system really should be to foster individuals so that they can best achieve their personal goals and really emphasize their personal strengths.
So just with regards to the with the PC platform, I think it's really clear for us to remember that Mr. Hudak has actively supported deregulating tuition policies. They've actively proposed to freeze professor and teacher wages and will cut funding to Employment Ontario. So that runs counter to building a stronger connection between post-secondary education experiences and what the province needs from a experiential learning position. And I think it's really clear that this community has a great sense of creativity and resilience, and there has a great connection between universities and the business sector. I'm thinking of the Communitech Hub and the Accelerator Center, and I don't know what's going on with this thing, but it's clear that Mr. Hudak has taken a very aggressive stance towards public sector, and public sector is university campuses. It's your instructors, it's your teachers, it's the people who keep the building clean. And there has been an assault on those frontline people. And if you're talking about quality, the best way to ensure quality in education is not to kick around the people who are delivering the education. So I think that what the candidate is saying here today is very different than what's in the platform.
Again, I think any time that we have a conversation and collaborate with our universities to increase spaces in vital areas, I think that's a good thing.
Quite frankly, though, I think that we have to stop thinking of our universities as a business model and really as an education tool.
And I think that's clear. This government has put in place a program that speaks to the Acceptance in Schools Act, and I saw a demonstration of that the other day with one of the students whose focus is on sexual consent education. I believe that that is certainly a working model.
All right, thank you, candidates. We're now going to return to the general style questions that are directed towards all of you, which have the format of 1 minute each candidate, 4 minutes of general debate, and then 30 seconds for each candidate to close. The next question will have the order of Stacy, Jamie, Tracy, and Catherine.
Okay, so this question's on youth unemployment. The youth unemployment rate in Ontario is more than double the overall employment rate and is also one of the highest in the country. As a co-op school, the majority of UW students must find meaningful employment in order to graduate. What is your party's strategy in ensuring students can find meaningful employment both during university as well after graduation?
Sure. Well, as I said already, we'd really like to expand the co-op program that's already available, as well as apprenticeships and mentorships. But in addition to that, we have several important ways of dealing with the jobless rate, which we know is really an issue for youth in particular. First, 70% of our jobs currently available in Ontario are actually through small and medium-sized businesses, and so we want to target those businesses and provide them with tax cuts that are directly related to employee salaries. That we can, so that they can actually be facilitated in creating more positions, and those types of positions are good paying jobs. In addition to that, we want to create a youth innovation foundation, and through that, we would provide further cooperative opportunities as well as funding and grants that would be available to students to help them create their own businesses, along with mentorship as well.
I believe that there needs to be an opportunity so that when you do invest in yourself and invest in learning and invest in experience, that you have the opportunity and a manner in which you can then convey yourself and what you believe and what you stand in. The youth jobs strategy absolutely has created 11,000+ jobs in the last year, and that's going to continue. We are committed to that. This is a very specific piece that has focus on development, but there's also another piece that looks at the Liberal government's relationships with business and investing in business and partnerships, and we can see that by the recent announcement with Open Text. There's the commitment to ensure that within this community, we are continuing to develop relationships so that there are jobs that are created by these businesses, so that our students do have opportunities, not only in co-op, but when they do graduate.
Youth unemployment, and certainly in Ontario, is a huge issue today. We certainly hear it from parents who have students in university. We hear it from students themselves. Our plan to create jobs in the province of Ontario really focuses around creating an environment where businesses want to invest in our province and where current businesses can grow and succeed. 98% of businesses in Ontario are small businesses, so it's the entrepreneur that is able to be successful in our environment and able to create the jobs. So it starts with creating an opportunity for people to want to invest in Ontario, and that includes creating apprenticeships, it includes creating affordable energy, it includes reducing business taxes. It's an integrated, comprehensive plan that is going to bring jobs back to Ontario.
So thank you very much. So the youth employment is not only an emerging issue, it's been a consistent issue in the province of Ontario. Under the Liberal government, we have seen more part-time, more precarious, more contract work than we ever had. This is the reality of the employment of the jobs sector in this province. We fought very hard as the third party to ensure that the Liberals would follow through with their youth jobs strategy in the 2013 budget. We wanted it to be a priority, and we put it on the table, and that idea primarily came from the consultations that I did as critic for economic development and a lot of time that I spent on this campus. Our platform is also looking at the emerging industries fund. So this is not only the tech sector, but the creative sector. We need to plan for a broad spectrum of employment opportunities that heighten our ability as a province to draw investment to Ontario and hold those jobs here, those local jobs. So our focus is on small and medium-sized businesses.
I also think that we can bring in the topic of transportation and transit here, because we're looking at ways to have students have employment. And I think one of the critical pieces is ensuring that students who live in this community, if they want to continue to live in this community while working on co-op, it would be beneficial to have an increased transit system, specifically the all-day two-way go. This government is committed to ensuring that that is put into place so that we all benefit from both ways, either going to a job in Toronto or being able to stay here where we live and going back and forth in a co-op term. That's one piece of investment that this government is committed to. But not only that, there are repercussions from that in a positive manner that indicate that this is going to add to our community, not only with jobs because of the whole development of that project, but with businesses looking at the space. As a tech company, I completely understand the challenges faced by not being able to have new talent brought into this community, and I am confident that all-day two-way go will help to do that.
One of the other ideas that the Green Party brings up, because we believe in a thoroughly integrated system, that by actually increasing our clean tech sector, what we can do is also, by putting in money to the clean tech sector, we can create jobs across the board. So jobs from manufacturing to engineering to electrical to innovation. And so not only are we creating jobs, but we are also at the same time decreasing our energy needs, cleaning the air that we breathe, and taking care of our environment generally. And so by creating that type of interconnected system, I think that we can actually solve multiple problems at the same time.
So on the economy, obviously transit is a major issue. You've heard many promises over the years for two-way all-day go. It's a priority in our platform, and it's fully costed out. We think that transit is well, we've heard actually from businesses across the province that it's the lack of investment in rail, for instance, and I know that rail means a lot to students, is that there has been, it costs $6 billion a year in productivity. It also compromises the quality of life.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt really quickly. Our next question is on transit, so if you want to use the rest of the time to talk more about youth unemployment, and then we'll get to transit in the next question.
Okay, so just on youth unemployment, so as I stated, Conservatives are looking to cut 100,000 jobs, and that's part of creating, in some strange world, 1 million jobs. Liberals like to give corporate tax breaks and corporate tax loopholes and corporations hundreds of millions of dollars. Those jobs rarely actually stay in Ontario. They often are outsourced. Our approach is very balanced and middle of the road. We support small and medium-sized businesses with targeted tax breaks. When they create a job, they get a tax break. When they invest in their business, they get a tax break. It's transparent, it's accountable. Small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of our economy. They keep jobs here in Ontario. That is our focus, and it's in our platform.
All right, thank you. And like I said, our last general question. Sorry, you still have your 30-second closing statements if you want to begin those now.
I didn't understand.
30 seconds. We can't hear you.
Our 30 seconds will start now for each of you for a closing statement on the youth unemployment question, starting with Stacy.
Sorry. Okay. So I think that we can have a multi-tiered approach to this, and I think that it is important to think about an integrated system. So one, we should support our small businesses because those are the ones that are employing people, and those are the ones that are providing good jobs within a community and strengthening local communities. But in addition, I think that we should really give students the opportunity to provide their own employment opportunities by funding new businesses, funding new ideas, and so they can really use the creativity and energy that they have to grow.
Through the Jobs and Prosperity Fund, we will invest $10 million to support the Experience Ontario program, which is a fully paid program that will allow students from high school to work for 9 months before they enter. This is an employment opportunity to develop new skills in a manner that they had previously done or not done before, and I believe that that indicates investment into the possibilities of jobs. I checked the numbers, and I believe it's 12,700 jobs have been created since the beginning of the youth employment strategy. Thank you.
I think we need to continue the conversation about youth unemployment in Ontario. It is only becoming an escalating issue. Our jobs plan for the province of Ontario will get the economy moving again and create interest for people to invest in Ontario. I think we need to be very clear that our business tax cuts provides every small business, every business in Ontario the opportunity to grow and succeed, which is very different than the Liberal plan, which only provides financial support for a limited few.
So a final comment on this is you have to understand the barriers to youth employment to actually find the solution. So small businesses have said there's a tipping point for hiring youth. They want to, but they can't afford to. So our job creator tax credit, which is a $5,000 subsidy with a guaranteed rate of a payment for students, gets you in the door. In order for you to build a resume, in order for you to build experience, in order for you to have that work experience. And so this has worked in Manitoba, it's worked in Quebec. Liberals will not listen to it for some reason. We think it's a sound plan.
All right. Our next general question is about transit. Students depend on transit systems to connect them to their families, employment, and recreational activities. Our community also relies on our link to the GTA for continued economic growth. Where does transit place in your priorities, and what is your plan for it over the next 10 years?
And this question starts with Jamie.
Well, as I've already indicated, there is a very clear plan that the Liberal government has put forward that unfortunately has been sidelined because of the election. That's challenging because that money that this is costing could have certainly been focused on transportation. The two-way all-day go has been announced. It's not waving a wand to make that happen. It is investment in the infrastructure. It is investment in figuring out the equation to make that happen in a sustainable manner. So beginning it with a very rudimentary program, which we've proven works, allows us to build on that and evaluate that from the perspective of how it's being used. We can use that information about ridership. We can use that information to show that it is a working model and that there is a continued need for that. And that is how you have a sustainable model, by using the information from doing a test model to ensure the success. This government is very committed to transportation. There are a number of pieces, including the $29 billion investment plan that it has speaking to infrastructure, an infrastructure which needs to have that investment to ensure that we have access to very good transportation to carry out all that we need to do every day.
I think we all know that transportation and transit across the province of Ontario is very important to economic development. One of the local issues at play here, of course, is the two-way all-day go, and our party has committed to providing that and working on that as a success factor for economic development in our region. Transportation after transportation study has shown that we have not put enough investment into infrastructure, trains, roads, and we don't have enough today. The Liberals have not lived up to their original commitments that have been made time after time on transit issues, and so I do have a hard time believing that they can follow through with all of the commitments that have been lined up in this platform. Our jobs plan does show what a priority transportation is, and certainly is a key ingredient in economic success for our province.
So I think actually the PC candidate and I agree on the lack of credibility that the Liberals have on the transit file. I was the candidate in 2007 when they first made a promise of expanding Highway 7, and since then there's been several ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings. In 2009 there was a commitment for two-way all day. This is 2014. We still only have 2 trains in the morning and 2 trains at night. So we've fully endorsed the model that has been brought forward by the municipalities of Kitchener and Waterloo and Communitech and the insurance sector. We believe that if that corridor is made more accessible, that Kitchener-Waterloo and the region of Waterloo indeed can be that Silicon hub that we've heard about for many years. There's the ability to create a tech cluster and connect it to the GTHA is a job creator strategy. 33,000 jobs for starters. So it is one of our priorities, and we would ensure that Metrolinx stops advertising and actually gets the job done.
Creating a strong transit system within Ontario is a strong priority for the Green Party, and primarily in terms of creating more train service. So obviously the two-way all-day go service is something that's really important, and not only that, but electrifying the tracks so that it doesn't take 2 hours to actually get to Toronto. In addition to that, though, I think that what's important to talk about is how we actually fund this. It's a very expensive system that we want to put in, and I'm worried that by offering funding that's actually coming out of the general revenues, that we can't guarantee that they'll actually go forward, and we're incurring more debt. So we're bringing forward a guaranteed $3 billion a year that will be coming out of general revenue tools that are dedicated specifically to this, including parking levies, congestion taxes, those types of things.
The floor is now open for 4 minutes on transit, if you'd like to use it.
So I think Stacey raises a really good point. How are you going to pay for it? I mean, that is the question, right? The NDP has proposed a modest increase to the corporate tax rate of 1%. Corporate Ontario has said to us, productivity is an issue. We want the government to dedicate transit infrastructure dollars so that we can draw investment to the province of Ontario. And we have listened to those voices, dedicated. And that's the key piece, is that when you make a promise, you have to follow through. Right now, just yesterday or the day before, the Minister of Transportation said that he's going to provide high-speed trains for $500 million when that project was costed out in the United Kingdom at $32 billion. He's promised a bullet train, same thing, for a bargain basement rate of $500 million. So you have to be very careful about promises, clearly, on transit. But if you peel back the layers and you follow the money, then you'll find the truth. We've made a commitment to the $29 billion that was originally in the budget, with a top-up of $250 million per year. We would make the two-way all-day Kitchener-Waterloo line a priority for the province of Ontario.
I think I have to issue some caution about the idea of implementing a dedicated tax that's actually coming from a corporate tax rate. I actually tend to agree that we should be increasing our corporate tax rate, and I think that that should be going into other programs. But in terms of actually creating a dedicated fund for funding our transit issues, what I would rather see is something that is directly tied to the transit issues that we have. So things like congestion taxes, things like gas taxes, all of those things for less than $1 a day, which doesn't tend to hurt anybody, will not only encourage people to become more conservative in terms of their driving, it will also help to push change people's mentality and make them more accepting towards the public transit that we're trying to encourage. And those are the ways that we can actually get towards the greenhouse gas emission savings that we really require in this province.
I think there are other ways to address some of the transit problems as well. I know that the Liberal government is committed to a Cycle On program, $25 million over 3 years, and this is certainly an amazing program that allows for the opportunity for people to enjoy cycling. Obviously, this is good for our environment. Obviously, this is good for getting around our community, and that's one of the pieces. I can understand Minister Murray and him getting excited about the concept of a bullet train. I don't know what he was talking about with regards to the numbers as far as what they were. I don't have that information in front of me, but I'm confident that he was just excited about the opportunity. He was not committing to a plan that was in place for today. But we do know that we have a plan that speaks to the future, and that's part of what this Liberal government plan does, is it looks to the future, and it has an opportunity to develop in an innovative fashion to the infrastructure. And that is, the Conservative government would like to plan for the future by not continuing with the electricity on the rails. If we do that, that completely annihilates the opportunity to develop that very same system that we do see an incredible model of in Europe. We do see the opportunities that it brings to those communities. And therefore, I'd rather look to the future and figure out how to get there than cancel everything and put up a road stop sign right now and not do it at all.
I think there's two key questions in this debate, and one of them has already been talked about. How are we going to pay for this? I mean, certainly the financial assessments, I have a finance background, are not even in the realm of being realistic. The other concern I have is, the number of different promises that the Liberal government has made. I'm actually confused, and you probably are too, in what they're actually promising in terms of transit for this provincial election. And given their past experience, probably not going to achieve any of them.
All right, thank you. And we will continue with closing statements from each of you, starting with Jamie.
I do believe that there is a clear plan in this budget. I'm very committed to that plan. I believe that it's a comprehensive approach to what we need for the people of this province. There is no doubt that this is a fully costed budget. There is a very large book if you would like a copy, or if it's available online, but I can assure you that yes, in fact, the numbers are there and they do add up. And this is a very good plan, and this government can speak to it, because not only have we done underspending on the deficit for the last 5 years, but we are the lowest spending per capita in the country, and we are committed to being in budget by 2017, 2018. So this government does have a plan, and it is completely outlined in the budget. This is not making it up or waving a magic wand and throwing in an idea because they're not expected to have a plan. This is a very clear plan.
In the most recent Liberal budget, there were over 70 promises that were made. And so I ask you again, how are we actually going to pay for this? And I don't believe that these promises can be achieved. And so I want you to look at the information from the different parties, and I encourage you to ask questions about the viability of the things that the Liberal Party is saying, because I don't think they're achievable. They would be very difficult to achieve in an economic environment that is stimulated and growing. And currently, our economic environment is stretched, and that's the key issue that we need to solve.
So I think it's important to look at the Liberal record on transit. Liberals delayed light rail plans for Toronto. They cut $4 billion in transit funding in 2010 with the promised big move. Actually, the person who was Minister of Transportation at the time was Kathleen Wynne, who's now the Premier. And they also canceled bus funding province-wide and failed to reduce commute times. Now, how many times have you got on a cramped bus? It's a basic infrastructure investment, and public transit has to work for people or they won't use it. And most people don't have a choice. So it's a worthwhile investment, and we are absolutely committed. It's costed out in our budget.
I think that there are two really important reasons that we need to improve our public transit system. One is that we need to make it available and accessible to people who need it. And two is that we need to be shifting towards that type of system that helps us to decrease the amount of emissions and pollution that we're creating, which is really important for your future, even more so than mine. And I think that we have to be able to do it all within a system where we've talked about exactly how to pay for it. So I'd invite you to look at our platform and see.
I think we should invest in a sound system.
Yeah, it's really distracting.
All right, thank you, candidates. We would like to take 10 minutes of questions from the audience, but it will put us about 10 minutes over time. Just wanted to check with each of you if that's all right.
I'm a little bit. I'd rather decrease our closing to 1 minute or something and try and save a little bit of that time. If you're...
Is that okay with everybody?
2 minutes. We've made it 1 minute closing and take 6 minutes of questions, something like that.
I think we're negotiating about 5 minutes of questions, and then maybe the closing may be a little bit shorter.
Yeah, if everybody's happy.
Is everybody okay with that? 1 minute closings instead of 2?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then our first question will be from Twitter. It's from Matt McLean on Twitter. And each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. There won't be any openings or closing or anything. So Matt McLean on Twitter asks, what cabinet position would you be interested if you had the opportunity? And the next order starts with Tracy.
Well, that's an interesting question. I think most of us would like to get elected first. But I think that when I look at my background and experience, I have a passion and an interest in lifelong learning and education. So I certainly have been asked before, would I be interested in the Ministry of Training Colleges, Universities? And it certainly is something that would align with my background, experience, and passion. And I think it's a great way to create an investment in our ongoing success as a province by looking at supporting the needs of our next generation. I think we need to look further down the road and certainly invest in our education sector. And I think that portfolio would be challenging for me, interesting, and I think I would be able to do some good work.
So if I'm successful as an MPP, I think I would like to be the Minister of Savings and Accountability, because I've only been at Queen's Park for 18 months, but I can tell you the amount of waste is astounding to me. And I think that we have I think the government has had its priorities messed up, quite honestly. You know, when we see corporations getting priority status over some of the most vulnerable people in the province of Ontario, which actually has a cost to it, there's definitely a way to reprioritize the way funding happens at Queen's Park. The Liberal government had the most amount of cabinet ministers in the history of the province. So lots of focus on cabinet ministers and not so much attention on the people who need the assistance the most. Other than that, I would be the Minister of Health, and I would reprioritize the way that we focus the health budget on prevention and intervention instead of reacting to issues in the healthcare budget. So I would go anywhere to serve and put people first.
Well, I think first and foremost you have to make sure that you're informed about every issue that is coming across the floor, no matter what your particular passion or interests are. My particular passions that have driven me really to become a politician, I guess, is really for the environment, and so that would be where I think I would work best. and really trying to push the province along and trying to push the federal government as well to try to work together better with the province.
Well, until that question was asked, I actually hadn't given it a thought. So thank you for the question, giving me the opportunity to think on it. Unfortunately, there's 3 people before me. Honestly, I cannot think of any greater privilege, and therefore I would be quite happy to have any role, because I have absolutely been committed to community development my entire life and to ensuring that this is the best possible community for my children to be raised in and for the best possible community for people to live in. And therefore, there is no doubt that everything that I have learned as a business leader would lend itself to any role within government. But of particular importance to me is accessibility. And so if that's currently under the Ministry of Economic Trade and Development and Employment, then that would be the piece that I would like to focus on, because it is imperative that we become an inclusive society so that everyone has an opportunity to achieve their fullest potential.
So I had a question from the member of the audience. I have it written down here, so I'll just read it out to you folks. So the question goes, I'm curious about the environmental platforms of each party and what they mean for the sustainability of our natural resources for future generations.
So that starts with me, so 1 minute. So we have, it's interesting because we just had an environmental debate a couple nights ago, and I think that the differences between the parties were quite stark. One of the key issues that we need to focus on in the province of Ontario is conservation on the environmental file, but also prevention. You know, Line 9, some of you may know this issue, the government has been lobbied heavily to do an environmental assessment of Line 9, and that's a bitumen that's going to be traveling through 6,400 farms in this area in and of itself. There is a great possibility, because the pipeline is aged, that there could be a leak. So why not do the environmental assessment first? Why not ensure that Enbridge actually has the insurance to cover the cost of a leak? And yet Kathleen Wynne and the Liberal government have decided that that's not necessary. So on the environmental portfolio, we know better. And quite honestly, without doing an environmental assessment, it is just not worth it. That's one of the most pressing issues that I see right now in this region.
I actually believe that it's hard to separate almost any issue you can talk about from the environment, because our economy depends on it, our food depends on it, our water depends on it. In terms of the green specific platform points, we too talk about the need of conservation, and for us it's really important to have a consistent platform. So not only do we believe that we should be putting more money and helping people upgrade their homes to save energy, we also don't believe that we should be giving incentives for people to use more energy, like with the so-called Clean Energy Act. So in addition to that, we believe in growing the clean tech sector, allowing our economy really to move over to a sector that helps to increase the amount of renewable energies that we use, hydro energy that we use, and get out of the habit of using really expensive nuclear power as well. We've got others, but I'm out of time.
Obviously, I think that the conservation, energy conservation as an education and to teach people that there is real opportunity here is very important. When you are in control of something, it certainly allows you to make decisions for yourself and for others that are personal. And I believe that by educating our children, we've seen in the past that that works. We've implemented an education program, Eco Schools, to make sure that our children are learning of potential new uses and ways of conserving. And we're talking about renewable resources. You know, this province is fortunate to have what we have. What are the ways that we are capturing that in a most dignified way, in a most cost-effective manner? And I think we need to focus a little bit more on the future and development and innovative thinking to ensure that our future does not look like our past. And that's to make sure that we are working on solutions that eliminate some of the challenges we are facing today. This government committed to an incredible infrastructure investment into this province because we were experiencing brownouts. And we are no longer doing that because they've invested to ensure that we're not. But we've also been committed to new ways of thinking.
The environment is certainly an important question for me. I had the opportunity in a former life to be the natural heritage education leader at a provincial park for about 6 to 8 years in a role that was focused on training and education of the interpretive environment. And so through that time, I looked at and learned about the importance of balancing the economic environment with the natural environment and making sure that our environment essentially is there for many generations to come. So whether it be our rivers, whether it be our streams, definitely I would like to support conservation efforts that ensure that those natural resources will be available for the future.
Hello? Okay. And so we're now moving on to our 1-minute closing statements for the debate overall, and that will start with Stacy.
Okay. First, I want to say thank you so much for hosting this event to the Feds and all of you. As well, I want to thank everybody in the audience for taking the time out of your day to attend. I think that it is so important to engage with these issues. In particular, I'm doing this because I'm worried about my children's future, and so I love to see so many people here. It is my worry that not enough youth vote today, and so I really encourage you to try to get to the ballot and bring your friends with you, because if you're not voting, then nobody is going to listen to the issues that are important to you. And so that is my request, that you not only think about green, but at the very least that you do get out and make voting a priority on June 12th. Thank you.
Robert Frost said that education is the ability to listen to almost anything without losing one's temper or self-confidence. After this debate, I'm confident that I received a quality education at University of Waterloo. My experience demonstrates my commitment to this community, to caring and to be daring to be different. I understand the value of being part of a vibrant community and contributing in any way possible to improve the life experience for everyone. I believe that life is an opportunity to be unique, to provide and develop innovative solutions, to provide opportunities for everyone, opportunities that evoke change. And so I challenge you, as students in our community, take this opportunity to choose Liberal. We've invested in you, and our future in this province is depending on you. So on June 12th, Jamie Burton, win, win.
I too would like to thank you all for coming to the debate this afternoon. I think the more that we can have dialogue, discussion, conversation about the issues that affect us and affect our province, we will end up, no matter how we get there with the different plans, with a better Ontario. So I think collaboration is critical. I think dialogue and discussion is critical. I think we all would agree that Ontario needs a stronger, more innovative economy. And I think that with my background and experience in both public and private and not-for-profit organizations, I have a strong balance of cross-sector experience where I would work on behalf of the people of this riding. The Ontario PC Party has a real plan to put us back on track. I'm very committed to working hard as your next MPP, and on June 12th, I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. For me, it's always a good opportunity actually to hear from students, and I look forward to talking to many of you after the debate. Just to recap though, the NDP platform, we are committed to tackling Ontario's high tuition rates, the highest tuition rates in Canada. We want to freeze post-secondary tuition and make student loans interest-free. This is a very different approach than the other parties that they have. We want to commit to addressing urgent campus and facility maintenance needs so that the quality of your education is not compromised by your learning environment, by an understated learning environment. And first and foremost, though, please, on June 12th, exercise your democratic right to vote. Our democracy is only as strong as the people who participate it. I thank you for coming out here today and listening to our ideas and our platforms, and I look forward to further conversations following the debate.
Okay, so thank you to the candidates for coming to the debate. Can we all give a round of applause to the candidates? I'd also like to thank all of you for attending, and to those who provided questions, thank you as well. We hope that this debate has helped you inform your decision to help you decide who you will vote for in this election. And I just wanted to remind you that on June 4th and 5th as well, you will be able to vote in the SLC MPR if you are voting for the Kitchener-Waterloo riding. And as well, just if you aren't voting then, you can also vote on June 12th. So thank you again for coming, and have a great day.